charisma to have authority. You know all these stories of somebody is a jerk, an idiot. Once you see he has a crown, oh, it's authority. And violence, here Hannah Arendt does something intelligent. He opposes violence and power. For them, as he puts it, for her, as he puts it in wonderfully precise terms, violence is ineffective in the sense that it's always a sign of impotence. Violence is the resort of those who precisely don't have power, which is why a power which has to resort to direct violence is a power which is already in panic. This may sound strange to you, but if you read memoirs of how they perceived its rule, Hitler, Stalin, and so on, they were all the time in total panic. That's why, again, they had to be continuously violent. But at some, so this is incidentally true even at the level of personal authority. Let's take the traditional figure of the father. I hope you get it, or I hope this is also your experience, at least it's mine, that a father who actually beats you, it may hurt, but it's a ridiculous, ultimately impotent figure. With a true father, with authority, violence is purely virtual. You know, just looks at you, no? The moment he has to act out, take recourse to real violence, it's an admission of defeat, basically. Okay, but where I would nonetheless disagree with Arendt is that the whole point is precisely that there is always a level of, how should I put it, indistinction between violence and power, a structurally necessary breakdown of their distinction. There has to be a threat of violence behind power, and the way every power retains its authority is precisely through obfuscating the violence on which it is based. And with this, I conclude. I claim that the first step, and this is my point of violence, I'm not advocating violence. I'm just saying that the first step of politicization is to see violence there where we do not even perceive it. So when we have today terrorist violence, I'm not telling you, no, this is nothing. I'm not telling you, oh, they had the right to strike back, we exploited them. But I am telling you, don't focus yourself only on visible violence. See the economic violence, all other forms of traumatic experiences and so on, which are, how should I put it, part of the system, which are needed so that precisely things remain the way they are. And the first gesture of a critical analysis is precisely to see violence there where violence is not even perceived as such. To give you an example which I hope you will immediately get it and agree with it, wasn't this the first great gesture of feminism way back in the 60s? What appeared before as just kind of a natural division or authority, you know, a man has authority and so on, it was reinterpreted not as a charisma authority, but precisely as false authority grounded in violence. To see violence where there is no violence, to unmask dignified authority as grounded on obscene violence, this is the first gesture to do. And so this would be my conclusion. Not, of course not. I mean, I did go through a civil war, modest in my case, but nonetheless, I'm no admirer of violence, you know. In contrast to some of my pseudo-radical leftist friends who say, oh, so wonderful, that open moment when people take over, when state power disintegrates. I tell them, wait a minute, did you ever witness this? I can tell you, when public power disintegrates, no, there is nothing pleasant about it. No, it's all one fear, anxiety. So I'm saying, nonetheless, what we should do, it's the only way to understand what goes on today. It's just to learn to see violence in all its scope, to see violence not only where it's open violence, but violence at all the levels where it is not even visible as such, and next step, to counteract it with, if necessary, violence, but not murderous violence, but what I'm tempted to call interruptive violence, which sometimes even amounts to do nothing. To do nothing when you are expected to do something, when your activity, your participation sustains the system. I effectively think, and that's the entire secret of my advocacy of violence, that Gandhi has to be reinvented today. Gandhi in his so-called non-violence concerning killing and so on, but also Gandhi in his idea of, really interrupting what's going on. Without this kind of structural violence, violence of like interrupting the system, well, we are approaching a society gradually, a new apartheid society of ecological and other catastrophes where, well, it is a world where I effectively wouldn't like to live. Thanks very much for your patience. And applaud. When we hardline communists take it over, you will have to do it. So keep your energy for later. So sorry, I'm grateful, but I hope at least that I clarified some of the misunderstanding when I usually accuse some kind of a madman waiting for violence. My God, I mean, listen, I didn't see it, but, like all those debates about violence. My God, did you see? I didn't see it, but I saw from Yugoslav war, which was extremely brutal. Post-Yugoslav war, Bosnia, and so on. I mean, I spoke with many journalists who told me, Middle East civilization, you cannot compare it with post-Yugoslavia. I mean, things happen there which you can't imagine, like the standard procedure when, for example, but there are also examples from others, Serbs took a Bosnian village was what? Something like you isolate young girls, you rape them in front of their fathers, to ruin everything. Then you cut the balls of the father has to eat his own balls, then you blind him, the father has to eat his eyes, blah, blah, blah. Like, all those liberating violence, I mean, I would like them to see a little bit of this. But nonetheless, the problem is that my distrust of liberalism is that, nonetheless, this purely procedural democracy, you will just vote and so on, also doesn't work. Some kind of a shock is necessary, which is why I advocate what I would have called a new version of some kind of a, let's call it Gandhian interruptive violence. With, again, the most important element being to see, this is maybe one of the big tasks of intellectuals today, to make us see violence where it's not even seen. And this would be, for example, for me, the way to interact with Arab world. Not liberate them by bombing them, but somehow, I don't know how, but it can be done, in full solidarity with them, for example, for their women, to make them experience their situation as victim of violence, and so on and so on. There is work, theoretical work, to be done. I mean, this may sound idealistic, but I think it's, at the same time, very political in a concrete sense. You know Freud, this wonderful passage from Virgil, Aeneid, Freud, Acheronta movevo, move the underground. Like, if you cannot move things on earth, move the underground, which means revolution starts by moving, by revolutionizing your dreams, what is beneath. Then only in this way you get ready to really change something. Sorry for another preach. Now we can play as if we are in a democracy. So please,